Hello, friend, and welcome to this now moment. Welcome to this video. Thank you for being here. Thank you for holding space for the mystery of life and all its intricacies and emotions and all of it. It's been really beautiful to feel that there's a receptive group of incredible humans out there in all corners of the world, all different time zones, all different ages, experiences, genders. It's just beautiful um, to feel that there's a incredibly beautiful collection and group of very receptive souls out there that are helping, honestly, helping me hold the energy of everything happening in my life, um, and I say that with a lot of gratitude. So this video is inspired by the new moon in Leo, big one. We're also going to touch a little bit, just a little sprinkle of Lionsgate Portal. And I'm going to perhaps dip a tiny toe into the full moon in Aquarius, just because we can't really talk about the new moon in Leo without talking about the full moon in Aquarius. And then I'm also going to touch upon some of the August themes. August is a big astrological month, and it has a lot of I want to say it's big energy, which maybe not in sort of the idea of big that we think of in terms of like, oh, like size big, but it's just very profound energy. And of course you have felt it. I know you have felt it. So before continuing, I want to say a huge thank you to my current patrons as the dog barks outside. A huge thank you to my patrons who continue to support my work and trust in my work and believe in me. I hold you in my heart. Um, to those of you who would like to make a donation for experiencing this particular video, which I'm opening up to the public, there will be a couple of links to do that below. No pressure, just if you want to contribute in some way to my work. Typically, I do these new moon gatherings, and we'll gather in a circle live for each new moon as part of my Patreon. I have 3 tiers. There's Moonweaver, Cosmic Creatrix, and then there's another third tier where we can work one-on-one. And from the first tier on Moonweaver, we do these new moon sessions and you get other things. The second tier, I just want to give a little refresher for those of you that might be considering jumping on board and continuing to weave the mysteries and the stories together, both astrologically, energetically, and just life, and feeling held and supported in a space where you can touch in and just know that you know, there's a frequency there that feels good and feels expansive and also feels like it's just loaded with this beautiful, juicy curiosity about all the things that are happening and shifting around us. And the Cosmic Creatrix tier, which is the mid tier, I've been doing this program over the summer months, which I will continue next week, most likely, called Craft Your Magic. But there's already a whole set of teaching modules with some videos, some audios, and downloadable, I call them spark sheets, where you can work through a few different layers of bringing something to life. And it's been a really wonderful experience to create that. I've heard good things. So that's available right now. And then that third tier, which we can work one-on-one for a personal session every month if you want to dive deeper into your own energy, astrology, your work in the world, your life, etc. So thank you to those of you who are already on board with that. I treasure you. And to those who might be curious, you can come and try it out. So the new moon in Leo, the main theme that kept coming up for me, and I think it's appropriate for all of us and certainly feels really poignant for where I am right now, is this idea of showing up, the energy of showing up. And there's both a dismantling. I think a lot of what we're being sort of invited to do is really a lot of dismantling and regenerating things, thought patterns, programming, beliefs, certain ways that we've thought about things, whether it's, success, perfectionism, goal setting, sort of in that realm, or in the realm of even spirituality. there's a lot of dismantling going on to then generate something new. It's a really highly creative space. Leo is highly, highly creative. It's solar powered, it's radiant. It has the sense of inner confidence, the sense of inner roar, the sense of owning who you are, and the true power that comes from the heart. It is a very open, very loving, very courageous energy. The word courage comes from from corazón, the Latin heart. Corazón is in Spanish, but you know what I mean. So the root word right there is heart. We can also always associate Leo with heart-centered courage, openness, the idea of just opening up. I always also think about your solar plexus, um, opening up to the world, engaging with the world in a very creative way. And a lot of what's happening in the world right now, and certainly, we'll definitely point to what's happening in the United States. And I will not hide the fact that I am totally on board and really, really looking forward to the idea of having a Madam President and infusing our government with a whole different kind of energy that is highly, highly needed, because there's some really rocky paths there that we could potentially go on, that hopefully there will be a choice made. And it's an interesting choice because I was sitting and pondering this yesterday. Um, it feels to me like it's not even, there's a lot of sort of story around almost like rescuing something that we've lost, which, yes, certainly, of course, an element of that. But really what this is ultimately a creative energy. This is creatrix energy at her best, which is completely, um, you know, not attached to any gender. And yet women, and I mainly draw a lot of really incredible, beautiful, radiant, powerful, soulful, caring women in this space, highly creative. We are desiring to look beyond what's already here to create. So rather than even seeing it as us protecting something that's already been created, the protection of something that exists in a stagnant form is a little bit more masculine. The idea of dipping into a well of infinite potential and what else, and continuing the thread of, again, generating something new, is a highly feminine energy. And I do believe that because of a lot of the collective work we've been doing, this is reaching a point of a peak where we have an example here beyond the gender of the person who may be our future president, which I think is just incredibly exciting as a way to move ourselves forward, as a way to show what's possible, as a way to break norms and break stereotypes. Yes, yes, yes. And also, there's so much of the work that we've been doing. And part of where I see, the sort of intersection between my journey as a caregiver, it's sort of this micro experience of something macro. And we can only look at the world around us through the lens of our own experience, right? So in spaces like this, just think about it as us together, me weaving threads together of thoughts, of concepts, of ideas that maybe resonate with you, maybe not. You can take them, you can leave them, but they will no doubt touch upon a fiber that is close to you, that is meant to be almost like, I'm thinking about a string instrument, violin, a guitar. And it's like one of those strings is plucked and it creates this frequency. It reverberates within you and it creates a note that is specially for you to hear and for you to then bring into your own symphony of life. So my note in this symbolic string instrument, this lyre, maybe to get very poetic about it, has to do with this intersection of me being a caregiver and reaching these points of just extreme exhaustion as I stretch myself in directions and spaces that are far beyond what I can even describe. and what's been going on in the past couple of weeks, what's been going on in the past nearly 5 years of my life. But in the past, I've had moments where it's really peaked and I've then come into a new rhythm. We've come into a new rhythm. This period of the past couple of weeks, as I've shared in a couple of my emails, has been incredibly intense. And I'm always faced with a choice of how do I continue on? And I find my own answers to that, and I find my purpose, and I find my spiritual thread of understanding, and I keep that light on, even if all of the fuses, is my favorite metaphor, is that I'm like a house that all the fuses have been just blown out all of a sudden. And then there's this tiny candle, tiny but mighty candle lit in the middle of the house somewhere. And it still remains lit. And that's that unshakable, no matter what happens, it's there. And it's something I have cultivated over time. And when we hit those really rock bottom moments and we can still feel and know that that candle is lit, those are the moments that will grow us and really strengthen us far beyond any moment in time that we're like doing well. So if you're going through something, have gone through something, no matter what it is and where you are on that spectrum, and you're hitting a complete wall, find solace and strength in the fact that when you hit that invisible wall, the bottom of the barrel, you're literally crawling through the floor of your own existence for whatever it is that's happening in your life. And you can almost like read between your intuitive, like read between the lines of the things that are happening in your life and sort of peek beyond. I'm imagining like blinds. And you kind of like peek through them. You know the ones I'm talking about. They kind of have that like metallic sound, and you go like, and you can still see some light. Then that is a truth that nobody ever can take away from you. And there is such strength in that. And then there's the choice to show up. And how do we, again, going back to the beginning of this video, deconstruct the notion of showing up? How have we been taught that you show up, that is appropriate to show up, the right kind of showing up? Do you know what I mean? We all have our stories around that, and we get to dismantle them. And this new moon in Leo, and then the follow up, and then go ahead and tie it to the full moon in Aquarius, are really putting us in the eye of this storm, this solar flare storm, of tapping into how you show up. And so take a moment right now, perhaps just I invite you to close your eyes if you're able to, and just feel into showing up right now. And is there any constriction around that? Does it feel heavy? Does it feel like a chore? Does it feel like you have to do something? Right? When we are tired, and as a world, I was going to say as a nation, I think we're whatever nation you are, there's a few nations right now that aren't feeling like the grip. But as a world, as a human, we are all feeling to varying degrees a sense of exhaustion, and the infusion of a sense of light, a sense of optimism, which is not toxic positivity that discounts the real, the pain, the struggle, the reality of it. Optimism is really the work of the creator, of the artist of life, of the creatrix that can see beyond this now moment, while also existing in this now moment, holding both of those realities at the same time. That right there, what a massive invitation we have right now, because Leo, again, is all about that creative energy, is all about how you show up. Show up is such a Leo phrase. Together, the idea of showing up, because there's this sort of like, vibrant courage. There's valor to Leo, this joy to Leo. Like a kid shows up and goes, I'm here. Showing up in your artwork, showing up in your engagement with life, showing up for yourself. And then when you deconstruct into the two words, Show is also very Leo, to show your true colors, to show yourself, to show your authenticity. Leo is associated with the performer. It's not only the performer, but there's an element of that, of the willingness to show your true colors, to let your freak flag fly, if that's what you want to call it, but to really allow yourself to be seen, and to be seen in the ever changing, ever evolving, ever shifting multidimensionality of who you are. There's another thing that we're deconstructing, is this idea of going on this quest to find yourself, rather than you are already yourself. You are perhaps discovering more of the truths of yourself, perhaps releasing some of the shackles or the gunk or the stuff that has maybe kept your light kind of crunched in. There's another thing that we're dismantling, this idea of I will show up when I'm ready to fill in the blank. Those are all constructs of the mind. We'll weave in shame also for a moment. I'll put a pin on that. But showing up, so show, right? Show. And then up. Up has this like solar quality to it to me. Up is like, when you get up in the morning, you gaze up, whether that's at the sun or at the stars, you hold your head up high. All of those qualities. And I will say that I think a lot of the mental misunderstanding we've had, and a lot of the mental constructs around showing up being maybe a pressure point for many of us, is because, again, there is a certain way that you show up. Okay. And so just explore what that might mean for you during this period of time. We're still, we're getting out of the new moon energies as I record this, and we're entering the Lionsgate portal, which is this beautiful, just celestial moment in time that happens every year that peaks on 8/8. 8/8, and this is an 8 year. This is the 2024. So there's a lot of 8 energy here, which is so amazing. And I usually do a really great Lionsgate event every year. I don't know that I'll have the bandwidth to do it this year, and it sucks because I really would love to. But I'm also being conscious of, my own bandwidth. Which is why I wanted to also infuse some of that into this offering and this sharing. And maybe I will share some more. I would love to. But the idea of showing up, right? Just play with that. And where can you bring yourself closer to showing up more for your own life, for what you believe in, to not delaying things, and to doing it on your own, I was going to say schedule, your own inner schedule, your own inner like cycle of where you are, but also making the choices that bring you closer to the version of you that is there, that wants to show up. And so in my own experience, this, for example, in a microcosm of my world, this is a video I wanted to, first of all, doing something for the new moon is really important for me because it's something I've committed to creating with my patrons, and I love. I've been new moons for me, like, and holding space for them. New moon in Leo. I happen to have my North Node in Leo and have my Sun in Taurus in the 5th house. So I have a lot of Leo impulse within me. My soul really wants to understand Leo energy in this lifetime in a very deep way. And it's been confronting for me, as is often the case wherever we have our North Node. Our soul has like an assignment there to understand that placement. So I have mine in Leo. And again, my Sun is in the 5th house, as is my Mercury. So the 5th house is Leo, and it's the 5th house is connected to the Sun, connected to the Leo. And I've had Uranus traversing through that area because it's been traversing through the Taurus placement of my Sun. So I've had Uranus doing all its stuff in my 5th house for the past few years. You can't make this stuff up. And so for me, doing something for the new moon in Leo is a peak moment in the year. And quickly I realized, well, it doesn't feel feasible for me I don't have the energy to hold space. So my showing up is going to look different. And I said, okay, well, I can record a video because I don't have a huge control. I don't ever really have a huge control over my time. But while we are shifting and a lot of changes are happening here in the house, and we're moving into new chapters. I needed a little bit more flexibility. So I was like, I don't want to, commit to a certain time, but there is that energy and the intention of showing up. And so I'll record a video on Sunday. And that just was not, I woke up Sunday and I was like, I felt one way. And then the rest of the day, I was like, I still feel like I'm a computer that's been unplugged. And I'm just like booting up. The physical exhaustion, my nervous system has just been like, I'm frayed and fragile and kind of like walking around. My current joke with Skylar, with my son, is like, mommy's brain farting all the time because I'm like, kind of like, what? Because I am so tired and depleted. And then because we're shifting into new stages here, and Jules is doing well, he's doing much better from being in the hospital, but it wasn't just the hospital. We had a caregiver who's been with us for a year at this point quit abruptly on us. No, you know, um, without really having a plan for how to continue our care. That happened. And then, I had a whole like breakdown moment. A couple of days after that happened, just from a collection of holding so much for the past 4 plus, nearly 5 years of my life, really. Um, and then the hospital, and then new caregiver coming in, training them, new ways to transfer my husband. Just I could go on and on. Um, the point is, Sunday was not going to happen, and then Monday, I was like, all right, I'll do it tomorrow. And Monday, I still today feel like all I want to do is cuddle up in bed, and I'm physically just shot, like so tired, so everything. I'm sad, I'm grieving, I'm feel very vulnerable and raw. And the whole time I also knew, but this is part of the work. So creating this video never felt like, oh, I have to do this because it's my, people are waiting for this. There was part of it. That human part of me was like, I said I was going to do it. I was like, I know, people out there are understanding. I know the audience that I have the privilege of speaking to are some of the most incredible humans around. And I get to remind myself of that. And the relationships we've cultivated, whether I've worked with them or whether you just read my email, maybe you've never even replied or we've never interacted in any way directly, but I know we have a relationship that we have been cultivating over time, because I have people that have been on my list for years and are still there. And so I get to also honor the showing up I've done up to this point. And I say all of this, and it's not just like, oh, story time for me, but for you to also connect the dots in your own way, how you have shown up, what you have already cultivated, and what you seek to continue cultivating, and the seeds that you want to plant around this very idea of showing up, of speaking your truth. Speaking your truth doesn't mean shouting. It doesn't mean being disruptive. Sometimes, yeah, absolutely will be disruptive. But the truth is something that is such potent currency in and of itself, will probably be disruptive for the simple reason that we are not accustomed. Most people are not accustomed to dealing in the currency of truth, of this radical truth and authenticity. And so we're constantly kind of masking and shielding and guarding ourselves, and for good reason. But we are not used to dealing in the currency of truth. So when that arises, that desire, that opportunity, maybe, we might feel completely like caught off base, ourselves and the people with which we are sharing in that moment of unlocking a new truth. I've had experiences of this recently with my family. I have an amazing, such a blessed relationship with my family. And I've had some moments of like speaking my truth that at the moment were uncomfortable. It ruffled some feathers, but what opened up was space for more connection and beauty than I even thought possible in that moment. It's happened with relationships in my life. It happens with Jules all the time. We're constantly confronted with that reality and navigating it. And truth is the currency, and truth is and that authenticity, that way of you sharing yourself, knowing that you don't always have to get it right. That currency is so valuable, and we have to keep practicing how to use it. We don't know how to use it, to be quite frank. We're learning. Maybe, some of you are more adept at it than others, for sure. I'm not saying we're all on the same playing field in terms of like, but for the most part, think about how we engage out in the world. Let's bring in shame. Shame is such an interesting one because talk about the collective soup, the collective cauldron. As I was literally deconstructing the idea of shame, meaning, what does that mean for me? I'm writing about it in my journal. I'm pondering it throughout the day. The idea of shame, the idea of right or wrong. I had a quick interaction with one of my clients where we talked briefly about it. She mostly held beautiful space for me to talk about my stuff when we connected. And we talked about shame, and it lit her up too because there was recognition there. And then another incredible former client, friend, woman who I deeply admire, um, mentioned it specifically in one of her recent emails. And I was like, of course, the idea of shame and the idea of right or wrong, this constant duality that exists about getting something a certain way. And let me tell you that one of the things I've learned most intimately about the experience of grieving, getting close to this truth that death and the experience of death allows us to see, is that we are constantly living in a paradox and in a world of contrasts, and that there are a lot of things that coexist at the same time. There's a conversation absolutely around morals, values, kindness. So that's that, right? But the concepts that we have around what's right, what's wrong, are we right, are we wrong, and then feeling shame for getting something wrong when we feel like we're supposed to be right, are drowning us and constricting us and siphoning our energy away to another destination. And that does not have to happen. It does not have to happen. I had this moment of like mini illumination, which was pretty profound for me, that I was like, what if, and I'm pretty certain of this, what if shame does not exist? Shame is, in fact, a mental construct. I'm not talking about don't, acknowledging when you have hurt somebody and we acknowledge it. I'm not talking again about the idea of following your own moral fiber, your values, the kindness that you show as a human, like, you know, the basics of you and me sharing space in the world, love, compassion. But we have been constricted in this idea of right or wrong. And then the shame that we feel when we don't get something right, when we feel embarrassed or ashamed of getting something wrong. And then that causes us to not continue acting forward in a what? In a creative, generative energy. New moon in Leo. Full moon in Aquarius. Unique. Aquarius is all about being unique and the collective. It's a very dual, paradoxical energy. Because Aquarius is all about your unique self. And you and not using, but engaging with the collective from the perspective of that unique self. So it's a very kind of individual energy because it really wants you to be your own radical, rebellious, truest self. You are a rebel just because you are the only one of your kind on the entire planet Earth. That right there makes you a rebel. That right there makes you a unique, completely individual soul. And so the idea of existing in a world where nobody else is like you is what? That is kind of the definition of a rebel, you know? So maybe there's other words for it that you might feel more comfortable with. But I have right here a thing that says Rebel Genius because I have a lot of also Aquarian energy. It happens to be my South Node because it is the opposite energy, opposite and complementary energy of Leo. So this month of August, we are working with that duality big time. How do you show up? Who are you? Who are you? We still have the North Node, the collective North Node in Aries the rest of the year. But this new moon in Leo asks us to plant seeds of how am I showing up for myself? What does that mean? And then the full moon in Aquarius I'm looking at my moon calendar here. And if you don't have one, you can get it from my website. We're looking at August 19th, full moon in Aquarius. Aquarius is also a big deal because we have Pluto that's going to make his entry into Aquarius November. Like it's been in this sort of last degree and then it went retrograde. And so it went back into Capricorn around like all of this that's happening. And a lot of it is hitting specifically like the chart of the US. The full moon in Capricorn is when we had that, the decision was made for a sort of the, the stepping. Sorry, I'm using my mama spidey senses to make sure that the boys are good. I think so. Yes, they are. So all of this is it's like I wrote about this in my email. We have a really good friend. He's not into astrology by any stretch of the imagination. I read his chart when he was chart once, and he has an incredible chart and great like cosmic story, if I do say so myself. And he was like interested, but also like he's a comedian and he'll literally like kind of bash astrology in his comedy. And I'm like, dude, come on. He came over on Saturday to help us out, hang out, and be a good friend that he is. By the way, good friends, the real good friends that really, really show up for you, show up again, are so rare, are so rare. It's another show up, another layer of the show up cake, if you will. He goes to me, Maria Aleandra, I don't know what's happening in the sky right now, and you could probably tell me the whole story, but yowza. For that and other reasons, not just what's happening here in the States, but what's happening in Venezuela, what's happening everywhere. He's from Venezuela. And I was like, yes, indeed, sir. Yes, indeed. And it's not just now, it's that it has been happening. And it's not even like, oh, it's been picking up. It's just been happening and happening. And this is where astrology gives us this like the sky poetry of this story, the cycles that we're working with. What everything from, oh, if you go back to the last full moon that we had in Leo, what was happening there? And how is that connected to this time in your life right now? All of these cycles, tiny sort of quicker cycles, medium-sized cycles, large cycles, extra large, super huge cycles that so many are colliding, have been colliding. And we will continue to have a very, bumpy, bombastic, sparks flying next few months because it's the astrology. It's just there. And we're at a tipping point. We are at a tipping point. And so how do we choose to show up at this tipping point? Think about the idea of, and I say this because I work with a lot of people that part of the barrier that they're moving through is this idea of readiness. Am I ready to? I want you to think about that as being a mental construct, almost like something foreign that was implanted in our system over, time and years of to keep, it's almost like this story that then keeps us in that like not ready to, which then creates a spiral also of shame. I'm surrounded by incredible women going through incredible things and struggling to find the words to maybe share. I'm one of them, and I've looked at what is the thread that propels me forward to continue telling my story, sharing my story, there's a pivot point here happening also in the realm of the sort of coaching industry having sort of like a death. And I say this again because you may relate to that. Coaching, guidance, anything that has that flavor, there's a shift happening there. It's being squeezed and transformed to something new. And you may find yourself kind of lingering in the middle where you don't really connect with sort of the kind of old school coaching, which I'm talking about in recent years, into what's coming new. And this is something I've been feeling into for the past, I'm going to say 2 years for sure, 2.5 years. And there's more of that. How we engage with the world as teachers, as guides, as storytellers, more than this idea of coaching. It's an interesting one. I'm not bashing coaches, and I'm not saying I'm just putting it all out for conversation. That's what we want to do. Because if not, then we get into the what's right, what's wrong, and then the shame sandwich. Oh no. And right there, it's like your energy just gets cut off. Um, this brings me to August Magical Moods, this mood board that I've been creating for the past few months. It's available for free on Patreon. And again, thank you for those who contribute every month because you also support my time in making this happen. This is something that I do basically just I sit down and I kind of tap into the energy of the month. And some of the themes that come up are kind of sort of obvious, if you will, in terms of the timing, where we are in the wheel of the year. But some of the themes sometimes catch me by surprise. And I alluded to this when I shared it. The theme that caught me by surprise in this month is the idea of libraries, the idea of books, the idea of knowledge and wisdom. And it was very clear. It was sort of this like when I first thought about it, I was like, oh, there's like this sort of like academia thing intersecting here with sun. I kept seeing this vision of a beautiful old library filled with books with big, beautiful windows and the sun just streaming in. That was sort of the original vision. I was like, that's so interesting for August. And it makes sense because that's sort of the month that links us into, links the summer then with the start of fall. So kind of fall vibes, but we're still in summer. We're still in the end of it. Don't get me started on all the things on Instagram about Halloween already. Since June, people. No shade if you are one of those that's already decorated your house in Halloween stuff. Great. But really? Anywho, but yes, August is like that bridge month, right? Um, but this idea of libraries and this library with all the sun streaming in. And as I was creating the mood board, it connected me with the Akashic records. And there's a couple things I want to say about the Akashic records. You may have heard of them. The Akashic records essentially is believed to be felt as this repository of information that you can access. You can access it yourself. There are a few books out there where you can, access your Akashic records. I learned how to access them myself. You can have a session with somebody to access your Akashic records. It is basically a repository of wisdom and information. It's almost like the ultimate library, astral library space that you can go to and tap into a deeper wisdom and intuition about your life, and ask questions and be held in the space where information will come through. It is a way to tap into that information. I don't believe the only way, but it's certainly a beautiful way. I love libraries. I love books. Sign me up. So naturally, I was like, oh, this is interesting. This totally feels like an Akashic record kind of vibe here in August. And again, this repository, the idea of this repository of wisdom that you can go and access, that's always there. And also, and this now connects me with the ritual and ceremony that I've been doing for the past few years about your word of the year, where we basically use this idea of a book to capture your word. That will definitely be happening at the end of the year. So again, this idea of books, knowledge, wisdom, your own wisdom. The Akashic records are unique to you, by the way. Then this took me to a whole other angle that I wasn't expecting. And it had to do with, because I thought, okay, the Akashic records, when we start talking about this, you immediately think about, oh, can I access it or not? Um, there is a way to basically like enter the space, but also brought me to this word and this idea of gatekeeping. And anything that smells reminiscent of gatekeeping in the spiritual community, in the spiritual learning and understanding, because anything that is in the realm of, learning something new, whether it's accessing the Akashic records, astrology is certainly a whole arm of knowledge, or you want to learn, uh, and tarot, oracle card reading, like all of these modalities certainly benefit from people that have learned how to experience them and are now maybe teaching them or maybe creating like an access point where you can now bridge this information easier so that you don't have to learn how to do all the things. And you can, just like you don't want to learn how to sew your clothes and make your shoes, and you go and access all these people, these like tradespeople, right? That have that craft, and you go and you create this access point. But don't ever feel, just like you can sew your own clothes and learn how to do it. Making our own shoes is probably a little harder, but hey, if we really wanted to, we could, right? Um, whatever feels like gatekeeping in the spiritual community and the spheres that you're in, be very like, be just like, hmm. I can think about, be weary of it, be suspect of it, be like, because again, it's not about not honoring the knowledge that has been cultivated and created over time by somebody who has mastered a modality, if we want to call it that. But also, do not allow any kind of gatekeeping to keep you from accessing your own truth, because that is a slippery slope. And I find, connecting back to the whole coaching industry, the coaching industry really depended on this idea of gatekeeping your own self from you. Just think about that for a second. This idea that only by, working with a certain person or buying a certain person's program or whatever, fill in the blank, you could access a truth within yourself. Can you learn something? Can you fast track something with somebody else? Yes, 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 yes. That's why we have teachers. That's why we have guides. Our coach is fantastic. Absolutely. The other day, I had an incredible session with a client where I coached her through, basically like gave her a new perspective on something. And then she connected the dots and was like, all right, I'm good. I'm flying. Yes, holding space for someone is incredibly beautiful, valuable, but don't ever allow anybody to gatekeep you from you. That is also very Leo, and that is very Aquarian. And I could put that through the lens of so many things. Do not allow anybody to gatekeep you from you. This is in the realm of, we take back our power, we are sovereign. And when we reach out to connect, to build community, to learn, to grow together, that is a beautiful thing. Just like I'm growing my garden, I want to learn how to sow certain seeds and learn about certain flowers. I go on YouTube or I find resources, or I buy, a book that somebody took care to write, a video that somebody took care to create, to learn from their experience. But I don't ever feel like I'm not able to grow that thing. Are there certain parameters and limitations in the real world? Absolutely. There's tons of flowers that I wish I could grow in Miami that I just can't because of the soil, the temperature. It's way too hot. So I have to adapt, right? We adapt, we're flexible. I wish I could grow all sorts of beautiful flowers that I've seen on the English countryside. That's just not going to fly here in Miami. It's just not. So I could either like, meh, be like, yeah, or I could find the flowers that I can grow with the resources that I do have. whatever that looks like for me. Could be a beautiful big garden, tiny garden, potted plant. I again show up. I show up for the thing that I want to create. So do not allow anybody in the spiritual coaching community, teaching community to gatekeep you from you. And if it's happening, get curious about it and go, where have I relinquished my own power? That is just not how it works in like the big sort of scope of how, who we're here to be and how we're here to move about the world. This video has been very long. I did not think it was going to be this long. I gotta go. Um, thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting my work. Thank you for your beautiful comments, emails, messages. I was flooded with love and I felt it and I feel it. And it makes a difference. You make a difference. And I hope I can make a difference also in your life by showing up in the way that I feel how to. And it's not for any of us, it's not going to be perfect. It might be sloppy. We're going to have lots of tries at it. A lot of people may not resonate, but whoever does will be so grateful for the fact that you did show up. And so, my friend, onward. Keep that light on. Um, let's have a let's focus on our light and our growth. And again, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you from the bottom of my heart for holding such space for me and my family. You make a difference and I appreciate you. All right. I will see you next time. All my love and stardust. Always, always, always. Adios.